There's been some allegations, this according to Front Office Sports. This popped up earlier this week. Allegations from former Minnesota football players on PJ Fleck, the head coach, and the culture there at Minnesota. A lot of stuff about, just the mental anguish they feel and just sort of all the other stuff that goes on there, and PJ Fleck and this culture in Minnesota and all the other stuff that comes along with it per usual. And so PJ Fleck spoke yesterday and defended himself and defended the program. Let's take a listen to the Gophers coach.
These allegations are baseless. We have full support of our athletic director, Mark Coyle, and our university leadership. This is a similar story that gets peddled every single year, and the majority of the players have been dismissed or removed from our football team. Our program and culture is proven to work on and off the field and is always done in a first-class manner. We're one of the most transparent programs in the country. There are tons of testimonials from past, present, and even future Gophers to support and prove that. My energy needs to be on the 2023 football team, and that only, and not the baseless allegations.
So there was PJ Fleck, the head coach of Minnesota, responding to these allegations.
So a couple things here. For starters, love the fact that this allegation came out. This article was written by Front Office Sports. And for those of you that haven't read it, I would advise you to please read it, because you're going to understand why I'm going to say what I'm going to say next, okay? There is nothing in this article. This article is truly baseless. It cites anonymous sources with, and I'm not always saying that you need to put a source in that has to be cited, but the entire article is based on quotes from anonymous sources. And if you look at it, for anyone who's been in an athletic environment of any sort, you're literally laughing. That's how big of a joke this is. This actually makes Front Office Sports, which I have no idea what that is or who that is, look like a joke. The fact that they would write this. And it really speaks to where journalism is nowadays, and it's lost. Because this is an example of a website. Again, I don't even know who Front Office Sports is, but just trying to ride off the coattails of what was a difficult conversations in regards to the hazing allegations and culture at Northwestern. And there's a website that wants to look for another, another scandal, another whatever you want to call it. And this was by far and away one of the worst pieces of an article that I've ever seen written to try to villainize a coach like PJ Fleck, who it doesn't matter if you're a fan of his methods or not. He is as upfront about what he believes and how he runs his program as anyone you will find. And look, it's not for everyone. His whole row the boat mantra, there's a story behind it. And when you hear that story, you understand exactly why he feels the way he does and why he lives life and coaches the way he does. And so I have an issue with where we are in society right now, where we've given a microphone or a soapbox to a bunch of people who sign up for something, like in this case, and this actually dates back to 2017 when PJ Fleck got there. There's some people who got pushed out of the program because they couldn't handle it. They didn't want to work hard. They didn't want to sign up for what he was asking them to do. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with people who quit or move on. It might not be the right environment for you. That's okay. When you go through different levels from high school to college to the NFL of sports and athleticism, there's different levels of intensity. And there's going to be different things that are asked of you. And if you really want to push past the brink to make yourself better and to get to a point where you don't even believe you can go, where your coaches have to push you past that mentally and physically, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're probably not going to like it. You might want to quit at times. That's part of it. And the fact that now we give a bunch of people who couldn't cut it, they didn't like it, it felt uncomfortable, and we give them a microphone to let them say whatever they want and bash guys who 90 to 95 to 99% of the players support that coach, believe in what they're trying to do. The fact that we're giving them a microphone, to me, tells you everything you need to know about today's journalism. Is we're just looking for any little negative article, any little thing. If you go to any company or corporation around America, You could find somebody who doesn't like their company. You could find someone who would call their culture toxic, or the fact that they have slogans or mantra a cult, or the fact that, like, for example, one of the allegations that was made was they punished them with conditioning. Oh, really? Are you kidding? Like, hey, how about this? Let's have a competition. Loser has to do suicides if you don't make enough free throws. We've never heard that before. We've never heard a coach have to say, hey, loser's got to condition a little extra. It's always been a part of stuff. It's part of teaching people the reward of winning, teaching people the reward of competition. I mean, it's crazy to me to see how we've allowed journalism to get to a point where, as a society, we have to start throwing this stuff aside and stop legitimizing whether it's front office sports or any other website or company that does this, because it's BS and it's sending us in a it's sending us down a really slippery slope.
Here goes the saying: hard times create hard men. Hard men create easy times. Easy times create soft men. Soft men create hard times. I've been on this narrative for a while now with what you're saying, Q. I've been listen, everybody struggles and suffers with mental anguish. You don't have to be an athlete. You don't have to be a football player. And when you think about, like, just historically speaking, the one sport that you can always count on there being a coach that is of that type of ilk, that type of way, is always going to be football. My first indoctrination into football culture was at 8 years old. And the mentality of the coaches was that it was very intense. And it was no nonsense. It was no BSing. It was all about getting these kids ready to play ball at a youth level. And you ultimately understand that coaches are going to be like it's always been an age-old thing. It's like the closest thing to the military. So you're dealing with a military type of environment with what you're doing. So you're going to do things that are uncomfortable. You're going to do things that are going to challenge your mental, and emotional stability. You're going to do all of those things, or you're going to go through those things when you're in competition. But the bottom line is you're going to go through those things in life. You ever find yourself wondering how you're going to pay your next bill? You ever find yourself wondering if you're healthy enough to get up and go do the job that you have to go do? Imagine being somebody who's working on a building, a skyscraper. Imagine somebody who's working on the highway. Imagine being a law enforcement person, or a person that is taking care of us as a first responder, a fireman, a fire person. The whole idea of it is that you got to show up. And you start to learn that in life, to be successful in life, you got to show up. And so to me, when I think about, when guys come out, and unless I know for certain, and you can show without a reasonable doubt, without a doubt at all, really, that it's almost like, to me, it would need to be, you might go down the road of saying it's abuse. Like, I have been around people who are abusive with the power that they hold and the power that they have as coaches, as people of authority. But even with that, there's a way to go about doing it. There's a process in which you go about doing it. And to me, more often than not, you see guys that don't have things work out the way that they would want it to work out, especially these days. Things don't work out the way that you would want to work out, and it has to be something else's fault. It has to be someone else's fault. There has to be a reason outside of yourself that there's a problem.
There's no accountability.
That's accountability.
We've
real accountability.
When we look at society and how we handle a lot of things, we completely remove accountability of the individual. And that's my biggest issue. Like any debate, conversation you want to have about anything right now, for me it always starts with, okay, what's my own accountability? You know, like I'm not going to point the finger at someone else or anything else if I can't be accountable for my actions, for my thoughts, for what I've said. And it starts there, and then that's the problem is there's so many people out there that aren't being taught that, especially young people. They're not being taught that, you know, for example, it's going to be tough if you want to get where you want to go. Like people act like college football is easy, just because you were a 3-star, 4-star, 5, whatever you were.
It's not easy.
It's not, and
that's
just
that's a part of the respect of it. Right. I was just at our event yesterday, right? I was at our fundraising event yesterday, and when a former player or current players greet one another, it's different than when a regular civilian greets one, an athlete greets a player. There is something to be said about me as a former player knowing what you're going through as a current player. B, what you as a current player know what I went through as a former player. Or both, right? As a current player and a current player, we know what we're going through. As two former players, we know what we went through. There's something to be said. There's a respect, a pride. My captain spoke before me. Brandon Short spoke to the group before I got up, spoke to the group. And the things that he said about me, they almost bring me to tears when I hear them. If we don't go through suffering, yes, people suffering. If we don't go through perseverance, yes, persevering. If you don't go through emotional and mental fatigue, you never build the bonds that are strong enough to last a lifetime. And for the people that never push themselves to that or engage in those type of activities to experience that, I feel for you, because I could never imagine not being the person that I've become through the development and the hard times that I've had to go through in my life. And those are badges of honor. And a lot of people just aren't up for that these days.
Aren't you grateful for it?
It is what it is.
Aren't you guys grateful
Absolutely.
for it, though? Because I look back at that and I go, my parents were really strict, and I had a-hole coaches that I thought, man, those guys were jerks at the time playing football, and I sucked, so there was a lot to complain about. But I can't think of one time in which they really got on me, either coaches or my parents or somebody that loved me. I can't think of one time that they were wrong about it. I go back and I go, yeah, they had a point. Like, that was true. I needed to get better. But
Jonas, even if they were wrong, even if you don't, like, I have coaches that I don't like. I've talked about it on the show.
But
I can't stand Dale Lindsey. Can't stand him.
What up, Dale?
But you know what? It served a purpose. And Dale Lindsey isn't going to dictate my outcomes, because it comes back to what Q said. It's the self-accountability. I am going to hold myself to that standard and that level to still show up and do what I need to do.
Whatever happened to, you need to get better, and I'm not going to be nice about it sometimes. I need to be stern, and I need to let you know that this is how you get better. Like, whatever happened to just hard coaching, hard parenting? And I feel like the abuse term has been stretched way too thin.
Oh, my goodness,
we're now spreading it out over every single interaction, when all it is trying to teach and learn. And that's a big difference between that and flat-out abuse. And there's been abuse, and we've seen examples of it, and all of that is legit, and all of that should be taken seriously. But hard coaching doesn't always mean that it's abuse. That's part
of the issue. Is that there's two rules of thought. When you're a parent, when you're a coach, when you're someone who's in charge, and that's really what this is. Like, so people understand. A lot of coaches feel like they take over as a father figure in a way when we're talking about football, because they are. They're with these young men for 4, nowadays 5, maybe 6 years. I mean, there's literally kids playing 6 years of college football more than ever before. But they're with them for a long period of time through a pretty formidable time of their life, where they're going to develop from a teenager into a young man and go into the working world, either as a professional athlete or not. And a lot of the foundation of what they believe and how they conduct themselves and what they're able to achieve is formed during this period of time. And I think a lot of coaches, they take that and they understand that this is, regardless of what people think because of what coaches get paid, all these guys realize the responsibility they have. And they all understand that I have to prepare them for life. And so I can be hard on them now, and hopefully life will be easier, much like they always talk about how you want practice to be harder than the actual game, right? That's kind of what it's like in sports. Like sports are they're a tool, they're a resource to help you to deal with life. Because life is harsh, man. And there's a lot of people who, they want sports to be easy and soft, and they want it to be comfortable. That's not it. I mean, LaVar touched on it. Like, there's suffering in life. Like, there's going to be hard times. And you've got to figure out a way to work through adversity instead of just allowing it to eat you up and make you continue to go down a downward spiral or a terrible path. And so a lot of these, coaches and people who are influences, they're using the game, whatever that may be, football or whatever else, to help prepare you for that, to prepare you for being a dad one day or a husband or what happens when you get fired from your job. They're preparing you for all these things, how you need to respond to adversity. And it's not going to be comfortable. They're going to push you past your limits. Or there's going to be someone there who's going to help push you past your limits or challenge you. And that's a good thing. But we're not allowing our society, we're not allowing people to feel uncomfortable or feel like they're being pushed. To your point, Jonas, it's now being categorized, well, that's abuse. No, it's not.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, Jonas, you work out all the time, right?
Yes.
And there's times where if you want to get stronger, if you want to look a certain way, you have to push yourself past what you want to do. There's people who probably already worked out today or are going to work out. I haven't worked out yet, going to work out. There will be times when I want to quit. There will be times when I'm like, I don't really want to do this. But you have to push yourself past that mentally, or have someone there who's willing to do that and help you push you past that, right?
Yeah, and never one time have I been done working out and been like, God, I wish I didn't do that. Like, you're proud of yourself. Like, hey, I accomplished something today. It's the smallest thing, but then they always talk about it. Like, start your day with a victory. Don't hit the snooze button. Like, let that be the first one, and it goes into, and it just sort of snowballs into the rest of your day. But you can't do that anymore because you got to let people sleep in, and if you don't let them sleep in, then it's considered abuse, apparently. And, if you can't say row the boat and some of the other acronyms that PJ Fleck uses, because,
you know what one of the best parts was is so Coach Fleck and I were talking with another couple coaches, and he's like, and they kind of it transitioned into like hey, all right, he said to one of the coaches, just don't use this against me in recruiting. He's like, I already heard from one of the coaches. He's like, oh, there's another thing I could use against you in recruiting. Like, that's kind of the funny thing now, too, is like it gets to the point where you're like, yeah, I mean, these guys, as much as you joke about it, it's now something that another coach will try to use against them in recruiting just because front office sports, goes ahead and runs with an article like that.
I wouldn't go, they row the boat. We don't even believe in boats in this program. I wouldn't go there.
The world's flat. We don't need boats.
Right.